the March. Thank you, David. I'll call to order the March 1st, 2023 meeting of the Union Finance Committee, meeting here in the Great Plain Room in a hybrid fashion. Many people here live, and then we're on video as well. So our first order of business, as it is in all of our meetings, is to see if there are any citizens here who would like to address Finance Committee. None, here, none on the screen right there. Correct. Then we'll move forward to the next agenda item, which is approval of minutes of our prior meetings. And the minutes we have in front of us for that are the minutes of February 8th. Is there any discussion on those minutes?
I move their approval, Mr. Chair.
Second moved by Dick, seconded by Jim. Any discussion or comment? Hearing none, coming to a vote. And Jim? Yes. Josh?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Louise?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
And no one, we don't have Barry yet. The chair votes yes, and so those are approved. Okay, we're gonna start our discussion of the annual town meeting warrant and the various articles that are here for town meeting's consideration for us to make decisions whether to recommend or not. And we have a whole series of them we're gonna try to get through tonight, and Dave consulted with me before we started and asked that we not necessarily follow the order here, but go in order that he would request. So the first one is town-owned land surveys. And it's not we don't have a number or a page, but it's
Somewhere in the middle.
no, it's in
No, it's
the
on the
first
third.
quarter. I can say the first quarter. You guys have a sheet on that?
We are, and I actually think on this particular one, it's probably useful to have the town engineer as well.
Third piece of paper.
You just want to pull your chair up.
My understanding, this is the second or third one, or what, how many times have we done a warrant article?
I believe it's the fourth or the fifth time that it's been a warrant article.
So why don't we hear about what's been accomplished and what the plan for FY24 is?
Okay, so what's been accomplished is we've done about 40 surveys, including the RTS survey, and we did the 77 School Street as well. The proposed plan has been prioritized by parcels that do not mathematically close, some work that has already been started but not complete, in areas that have conflict with public right-of-ways. This was vetted by the previous town engineer too, and we concur with the progression that he selected in the past. The final project will give us legal recorded documents that will record at the registry of deeds, help with the house cleaning, and work on projects that we can continue in the future as well. Do you have the list in front of you?
No,
That's
That's what I was asking for, yeah.
So the first one we have is yes. Sure.
Is this done in-house or a combination of in-house and outside consultants, or how does it work?
This will be outside consultants. There is some house cleaning work that we can do in-house, cleaning up records and make sure we have the plot plans available to have those survey crews. But the stuff that has to be recorded has to be outside consultants.
You do that like an approved vendor list, or how does that work?
Yes, right now we have 5 on our list, 5 separate consultants.
We just did a qualifications process about a month and a half ago for all of our road and survey work.
Have we expended all the sums that had previously been authorized?
Yes, we have.
And I think I mentioned in my memo an operating budget that when we revisit our budget next year, we would certainly consider whether or not this is really an continuing operating expense or if it is a special warrant article. As we foresee the need to continue this process into the future indefinitely.
Thank you, Davey. I will pass them along.
So is there a tie-in between the work that's done, has been done and proposed to be done with respect to sort of active things that the town has a plan to either make specific use of the property, make a different use of the property, add on to the property? So is it focused on you talk kind of hot stuff, or is it just, I'm not trying to be derogatory, but is it just kind of make work? And so how is it decided, you know, what's important and what isn't? Can you tell us a little bit what that process is?
Yeah, so mostly it's like, information that doesn't close, like property lines that do not close. We have like parking lots off of Dedham Avenue. Then there's some conflict of where the locations are. It's in residential areas. There's areas that have encroachments occurring. These areas that are right off of our public right of ways, it's good information to have. So if we are going to be using infiltration for stormwater, you know, is that an opportunity to look at this property, or perhaps in the future make it part of the right of way, you know, such as Noyes Park area off of Melrose. There's another park area, Vesta Park. There's on Dedham Avenue, there's a little park area. So some of these are little park areas right off of the right of way that could be utilized for our nifty stuff in the future.
A few of these areas are locations that have been circulated around for ideas like parks, dog parks, other opportunities. And it's hard sometimes to answer questions in a feasibility study when you don't actually know what the confines of the property are that you're supposed to be looking at to develop.
Is this an order of priority here?
Not necessarily in the priority.
Because I guess I don't understand the strategic importance of the wooded area, Great Plain Haven. That's the stuff across from Hazel's.
Yes, although that has come up on several different conversations about, you know, all the different facilities we have in town and what potential areas we have for development. I know we've talked about it for a play, theoretically, just hypothetical conversations about a playground. I think this action, I'm not sure if the action park is considering any of these areas, but I know I think they are. So these are areas that have come up in conversation. I believe, Tom, these are items that we believe we can accomplish with the $100,000 that we're requesting this year. So that's the total request for this fiscal year, is the items that are on the list.
There might be a playground next to the 8T. So I can get that right. Interesting. So how many of these are there? Like, how many of these little love spots are there?
For this round right here, we have
No, no,
7,
no,
but
no.
for total.
Yeah.
So we have identified that there's probably another 15 that have that are problematic. And there are several others that we have to do further research into see. Some of them are just, we're not gonna deal with because they're so small areas. Like there's a couple of areas that are like 40 square feet. We don't want to have to contend with something like
So I
that.
would be interested in getting a complete list.
We have a complete list, yes.
I would just, and then I think, as Dick mentioned, maybe you could explain to us, you know, in a letter or something, which of these, you've got 7 here, which of the total 22, 23, how are you prioritizing those and why? That would be helpful for me.
And also
Mr.
what
Chair.
we've completed so far, because we've done this a number
Well,
of
that's
years. Yeah,
Sarah said either 4 or 5, so.
yeah. I remember when this first started. I'm sure you do too, John.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Dick.
No, I'm glad to hear that progress is made, but it does bring up the point of, if you get 7 here and 15 to go, where they're an economy of scale saying, let's get them all done at once and see if, you know, we might, instead of someone having to mobilize and demobilize 7 times or over a year and then come back again for other projects, maybe get it all into one and get it all done with once and for all and forever. I think it's something to consider.
So I think these,
Because, I mean, for example, if GPI just comes out to do that one and then leaves and comes back 6 months later, we're probably gonna pay duplicative, if DPI finished that one and went on to the next one and just worked their way and get the list and got it done. And I just wonder if we might be able to achieve a little savings doing it that way.
I could ask them about savings, they do keep the record, so, like, there's a lot of separate lots up a Rich Hill area, which, so they're doing one parcel, but they keep that information so they can do the next one, and so they can build off of that. Yes, I can provide a list, and show you the next 15, and I think, out of the 15, I probably have a few of them that are priority, versus having them all done.
And it may be that, we will want to discuss whether their prioritization is such that we should fund it. I mean,
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I think rather than, they might be able to get it all done with.
Yeah.
So. So why don't we can get the further information on that, that would be helpful.
And when you give the explanation for potential future infiltration area, why is survey significant with respect to that? Because that in and of itself doesn't tell me anything anyhow as to why the survey is important.
Right, yeah, we want to make sure that we have the proper setback information and make sure that we're not encroaching onto somebody else's property or close to their property if we're going to be doing.
Is there any risk of that with item number 1, Great Plain, Harris Avenue, the wooded area?
There are butters there.
Yeah,
As
but
Jim said, other than the 8th tee with a couple of golfers out there.
Yeah.
Or could it be also on the other side there, where it's a pretty big depression. And it
It's on
goes
the other
down.
side.
Well, but that's it. You can't build anything. We went through that in the early 1990s.
Can I understand, since this is part of DPW, just from your perspective, how does this compare in terms of urgency and priority to some other things like building maintenance or traffic improvements?
I think it hits on it's important to do, but if it gets deferred a year, it's not going to hamper our operation compared to other items that we have that could set us back much further if we don't fund them. So I think it's an item that we would want funded as part of like a preventative program, but not necessarily something that would trump an urgent need.
Particularly because, look at these, none of them are, are ones that it looks like we're about to do some development there or do any special or different project. So I'd ask you just to think about it, that maybe go back and take a look and say, maybe we should restructure this. If we do defer it, then maybe have next year be it all, let's get it all done. And we do one procurement and one charge one company to do it, and they have their people out here and they get it done. So I just, if you guys could think about that and get back to us, I'd appreciate it. Anything else?
I'd like to know the derivation of Hatfield Park and Vesta Park.
In other words, why they're not called Healy Park?
Well, that was what I was getting, what I was getting to.
So I believe, one of them is, at least family owned for Vesta, I think right off of Dedham Avenue.
So the family actually lives adjacent to it?
Well, used to own the property they gave to the town.
Ah.
Yeah.
I think, well, I'd be interested in that. Thank
Anything
you very
else?
much.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay.
Next, we had fleet refurbishment.
Yeah, so the general fund fleet refurbishment is a continuation of something we've done, I want to say twice historically now, where we asked for $150,000 in order to take existing vehicles and give them a little extra love to extend their life cycle. I will say this has come in very, very handy when we had significant delays in either getting quotes for municipal vehicles or receiving already ordered vehicles due to all the supply chain issues stemming from the pandemic. We've been able to kind of prolong some of the life cycles of our vehicles until we were able to start getting new vehicles in. And then we are also asking for a similar setup with the sewer enterprise fund at the moment. We're seeing a lot, especially our Vector truck. I want to say we had to take out of the operating a significant portion of money in order to refurbish that and get that back up and running. And it's something that it's way too expensive to do a duplicative and have two as a backup. So this money would allow us to keep investing in these pieces of equipment that are vital to our operations. And they don't necessarily need to be replaced. They just need a little bit extra above and beyond refurbishment in order to prolong their life cycles. And we wouldn't ask for this every year. It's kind of based on what we're seeing we need. So if we have one or two significant projects that come in and we do need something next year, then we would. But I think the last one we managed to stretch out, I want to say 2 or 3 years. It's just based on how our vehicles are doing at the moment.
Is this work that we do in-house or do we send these?
We send them out.
We send them out.
There are some instances, yeah, that we might order parts for, and if we can do it in-house, but the larger sums are typically sent out.
Do you have specific vehicles in mind, or is this just an allowance, if you will, that you will give you authority to draw down?
Yeah.
We do actually target specific vehicles, primarily high-value vehicles. The snow and ice are probably the #1 goal of the effort, to make sure that they make their life cycles.
I have a question about that, if I may. What do you mean the snow and ice?
Snow and ice equipment gets more wear and tear and effects of corrosion, so therefore they need intervention midlife to ensure their life expectancies.
What do we have that's snow and ice specific equipment? That's not regular fleet maintenance equipment, fleet equipment?
Well, I'm not sure of the question.
I think I can answer it. So they're dual purpose. We have a dump truck that's
Yeah.
used year round,
Right,
but for snow and ice, we have a spreader that goes in it. It's got a plow, so it's the components for the truck. Those vehicles that we use that are dual purpose, like our spreader vehicles with the spreader inserts with the plows, they see more wear and tear because of the nature of the work. We're pushing the heavy snow with the corrosive chemicals that are on it because the salt is corrosive. So in John's point, being able to take these and refurbish them mid-cycle make sure that we can keep that piece of equipment on the road for the intended life cycle as opposed to a shortened life cycle.
thank you.
Because you're gonna use it for the rest
For
of the
the,
year.
yeah,
Exactly. We'll use it year round as opposed to just snow and ice.
So Chair, do we need to see a list of what they want to do and why, or?
Well, at least I don't feel the need, but if people do, you're certainly entitled to ask. My question was, Dave, the division between free cash and sewer enterprise fund, what's the?
That was the way it was requested. They asked for 150,000 dedicated for sewer enterprise equipment vehicles and 150,000 for general fund vehicles and equipment.
and over what period of time do you anticipate spending this money?
Currently, we have it built into the capital process, I think, is every 2 years, and then we've extended it out if we haven't had the need, or we've been able to in-house projects in the meantime. So I think our replacement for the general fund was every 2 years, and I think Cecilia is gonna look up what our request is for the sewer enterprise fund.
Yeah, and I will say historically, we requested the general fund fleet refurbishment for FY18 and FY22. So there was a small delay. The first expense didn't
I
take,
only ever recall it twice previously,
yeah, FY18 and FY22.
FY18 and then once prior to that.
This is
This
what
is
we
the
have
one-
from
Yeah.
the warrant, so.
Okay.
yeah.
So maybe
Um,
that's when we authorized them. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and so I would, again, I put it in there for FY26 for the general fund with the idea that we'll revisit when we're putting in for that budget, like, do I have $100,000 left? Do we really still need to ask for it, or should we push it out, or are we having like $2,000 left and we really should? And then also it's a conversation with John every year on, are you seeing, or do you think you will need this money, or are vehicles in good shape? It's really dependent on exactly how the vehicles are looking. And then with regards to sewer, I don't remember off the top of my head, let me just double check.
You only have one request.
Yeah.
5-8
So I
period.
only did one with the idea to see, because it's a smaller fleet, obviously, but also they are more complex pieces of equipment in the sewer division particularly. So it's kind of like, let's see how this goes, and if we were gonna need it in another 2, 3, 4, I didn't want to kind of guess. I wanted to see how this first round took.
May I suggest that we look at this article again with the fleet replacement when we address that article? I don't remember what date that is, at the end of March sometime?
It'll be before the full committee, the 29th.
29th, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any additional information you'd like, so we can at least tell them now for that discussion, or
No, I
you'll
think,
think about it?
yeah, we'll think about it, and I think in conjunction with, you know, what the replacement cycle is and how this fits into the replacement cycle and extends the life of vehicles.
We can certainly provide historic work that
Yeah.
we've done, and I just think if you, I'm in touch with a lot of my peers, and I think there's a lot of communities right now that have equipment or don't have equipment that functions properly because of the delays in replacement cycles from various dealerships. I think we're about 2 years behind on most of our pieces.
Yeah.
And many of those pieces then take 2 years to take a year to 2 years to manufacture. So we're in a really good place because we had this ability to invest in our existing equipment to the point where we're selling our equipment that we don't feel is really safe to operate to neighboring communities who are then operating it because it's better than the equipment that they have in their fleet. So I think that this particular program that John put together has served the community very well.
I know we would never sell anything if we didn't feel it was safe to operate.
Yeah, I was.
But that might be helpful when we do
Very
discuss it.
very fair.
Seems like this is a package. So one piece of the package is extending the life of equipment. Second is buying new equipment, and the third is proceeds we can realize from the sale. So if we had all those pieces of information together, that would give us a good overview of the program, which I think makes a lot of sense.
So just so I understand it, I'm working backwards. So you're looking for the revenue that we've been able to collect on vehicles that we've sold.
Yep.
We're looking on the amount that we've invested and the life cycles.
But, you know, as we said, what you've been able to expend this on, and then we'll also
Extend the
see
life
what
cycle.
new projects and new vehicles are required.
Yeah.
Because that seems to me it's all of a piece.
Okay, so we'll do that in March. You had that, what, March 30, Louise? Is that right?
29, yeah.
29.
I do think, Mr. Chair, it's a very valuable program. So I support it as a general principle.
So we get that information, we have a discussion on the 29th, and we'll be able to vote on both of those at that time. Any other discussions on that? Thanks, John. So David, following, you next wanted to go to expending state funds for public ways, chapter 90.
Yes. So forward or backward? Backward.
It's on that page.
It's on the next page.
Who's gonna speak to that? Actually, you gonna speak to that, or?
Yeah, I can speak to that. It's our annual allocation of chapter 90 funds. Historically, we have taken the funds that were in this account and stored them for a renovation of the downtown. We're currently in a restart, reimagining phase of the downtown renovation project. Originally, it was a concept that we would design the downtown and then construct it in phases, 5 or 6 phases, over several years. I think the reality is that things change over time. I think COVID changed things pretty significantly. And the design that we had initially envisioned for Great Plain Ave didn't necessarily meet the needs of what we were looking for in our downtown. So we've put that project on hold. We're doing a parking study, which we should have results from shortly, to look at the parking in the downtown to see if we are underserviced for parking, overserviced, and if we have parking in the right locations. Because figuring out what to do with the roadway on Great Plain Ave in particular, it's a very tight right of way that we have, so we don't have a lot of room to allocate things like on-street dining, bike lanes, widening sidewalks, street trees, and also accommodate all the parking and traffic lanes that we currently have. So because we have put this study on hold, we're looking at utilizing chapter 90 to supplement our infrastructure article. We're going to be pulling out specific projects from the infrastructure article to allow for more general roadway maintenance, and put the larger projects, the large one we have right now is Mark Tree, towards chapter 90. This will likely result in us coming before the finance committee in future years, looking for supplemental funding for our downtown.
What's the expected amount of chapter 90 funds? Do we have a forecast for that, or is it a placeholder?
I
I
don't
know
know.
this is just allowing us to do it when we get it, but do we have an idea of what it's gonna be?
I assume it's a $200 million distribution again, it would be near $1 million.
And what's the balance of funds that have been saved up for downtown improvement?
Over 4 million.
Ask
Any
a quick
questions?
question.
Yeah, Barry?
Could you just maybe describe a little bit about what part of the plan isn't being done now and more specifically?
In the
terms-
downtown?
Yes,
So originally, there was a vision to renovate the entire downtown corridor, so it would have been Great Plain Ave from Linden all the way past Warren, down Chestnut, up Chapel, and up Highland Ave. We executed the first phase of that plan, which was the 2 traffic signals on Great Plain Ave and the limit of work in between.
Okay.
That was largely one of the largest complaints about the downtown was the flow of traffic and the old signal system there. And so the remainder of the project, which is everything that we have not currently completed, is what's on pause until we can get a better consensus and do some more design work based on what the current needs of the downtown may be.
okay, thank you.
Louise?
So the only comment I was gonna make, which is the same one that I've made in the past, is I really think the chapter 90 money is meant for the roads, which I'm very glad to hear that that's what we're gonna be using it for, not really meant for those larger projects and money to just be squirreled away. That really should be a separate vote by town meeting because they're separate projects. And I've said that in the past. I'm very happy to hear this year that we're using it for roads.
How much has been spent on the town common component of all of this downtown project?
So the town common was a separate vote under partially CPA funded and partially funded. The current budget is
1,364,000 for the construction.
and we are receiving an earmark from the state for an additional $175,000 to buy additional furniture for the downtown, for the common.
Anything else?
I
You wanna make
agree. I agree with Louise. I've always thought chapter 90 monies were in essence to make those roads that come under chapter 90 more passable, more usable. And I don't believe it was to redesign the downtown. So I agree with you.
Is there any either further questions or information people want, or are people prepared to vote a recommendation on this article in as much as it's just to authorize spending of money that were received from the state? So Louise, you want to make a motion?
Yes, I recommend
Please.
that, I move that the finance committee recommend approval of the article entitled authorization to expend state funds for public ways.
Is there a second? to that?
Second.
In the amount of the chapter 90 funds, which we don't know yet.
Right.
Seconded by Dick. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, coming to a vote. Barry?
Sorry, yes.
Louise?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Josh?
Yes.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, so that's our first one. First of 50. Only 49 more to go. All right, Dave, following along your request, next we have a general fund cash capital.
Yep.
Now, we
Turn
heard,
6 pages.
what's that?
Turn 6 pages.
It even has a number, which is Article 23. Goes there on mine, right?
Must be a carryover.
Yes.
All right, so some of these are ones that we have discussed previously during our operating budget meetings and discussions with the departments. And tonight, we wanted to see if we could tackle some specifically. To have discussion on, I don't think we can take action until we have the entire article gone through, but let's start first with McLeod.
Yes, so McLeod Field, this is the construction phase. We're wrapping up the design. I believe they were in front of conservation last week, 2 weeks ago. Lost track of time. But basically it is to renovate the existing field and to convert it from a baseball to a softball field. This project will repair some of the drainage issues that are causing sinkholes when it gets really, when we get really heavy rains that prevent the field from being playable. It'll also increase the current spectator level and provide some upgraded lighting. As anyone who was at the Claxton Fields Joint Committee meeting here, there's a high need for softball fields in the town. So this would also support this as well as regardless of how Claxton goes, this field is aimed to be open and kind of provide that backup for sports.
This is the field at DeFazio, is it not? Yeah, it's not the Claxton field.
No, this
And
is
this
McLeod, yeah.
So the, when we did Claxton, I think it identified that there were an insufficient number of softball fields. So it caused the Park and Rec Commission and our Parks and Forestry Division to look at other potential renovation locations to provide more softball. It also provides a surface for the group to play while we're renovating Claxton as well.
Is this temporary?
No, the intention is to make it a permanent field for play for softball.
So, and even if we do the work at Claxton and we put in softball fields back there, we would still have this permit.
That's correct. I think there's a few reasons, and Ed can certainly go into more detail, but one of the things we found when we were going through the process of designing Claxton is that there was an initial design that we had wanted to do, which would have put in new lighting and flipped the two fields and allowed for, I think, better fencing and better space for varsity sports. Because we aren't able to excavate that far down because of some of the conditions in the soils, they were looking at a alternative location. So I believe the intention is to have varsity continue to play at McLeod Field.
So you know John McLeod, right?
I do not.
Yeah, I played one. So he was Little League. He was one of the original managers that started Needham Little League in 1954. Didn't have any children, but basically every person he coached was one of his kids. So he was baseball, and I'm not against softball. I love softball. But I think I would hate to somehow erase part of history. Like I want to know about Hatfield and Vesta, but I know about McLeod. Second comment I would make is I was part of this field project at some point. And we intentionally put in a softball diamond at the end of the rectangular synthetic turf field. As I understand it, that's never been used for softball, or if it was used for softball for maybe a day and a half.
You're talking about the high school, correct?
Correct. Has that ever been revisited?
Yeah, well, just recently when we had the open meeting with the user groups and the public at large, the girls softball team came out in support of using that space for the first time really since I've been here, Jim. You're right. It has been undervalued.
How we built it.
Absolutely. I think one of the first generation issues with that softball skin was the bubbling of the skin surface by the mound and the home plate. But with the new surface, we welcome the girls there, and we'll see. The one problem with that field is the lacrosse fields there. So again, to practice is fine, but to have a game while there's a game is probably not the safest thing. So I think there's going to be some limitations to that field, but I do believe that we'll see the girls out there this spring.
Okay.
So just two questions that I had. One is, if this work is to go forward, when is it scheduled to take place? Is it next fall, or this summer, or what? That's the first question. And the second question is, you talk about baseball, you talk about softball, you talk about, is this all been vetted through Needham baseball, Needham softball, through, does the baseball people know they're losing this as a baseball field, and is all that been communicated? And I just want to make sure that's all occurred.
Yeah, we made sure to, that the Park and Rec Commission was taking the lead on deciding the priority of the projects that we have and also the use of the individual fields. And we provide the support on the feasibility of it and making sure that it's designed and able to be maintained correctly. So it was vetted through the Park and Rec Commission, and they did meet with Needham softball and baseball, and I believe they met with other user groups as well. I can certainly reach out to the Park and Rec director and confirm.
Yeah, I'd like to get that confirmation, just because I think I wouldn't want to be caught to say that we're going forward with this and Needham Baseball said, well, no one ever talked to us. I'm not doubting it hasn't happened, but I just like confirmation of that.
But we are looking to start the project basically if funding approved, as soon as funding is approved.
So this summer,
This summer, exactly. Similar to any other field renovation, it would be a summer slammer. We try to have the field substantially complete so that we could open for the following softball season.
Will there be an emergency preamble?
And why did you pick this field as opposed to any other?
One of the big reasons was the fact that a lot of the amenities that the user groups wanted were more feasible to develop there. The lighting was already there, so tapping into lighting was much more feasible and cost effective. And the other thing was that, you know, since I've been here, Louise, we've had that 4-foot drain that's been failing every year. So every time we have a stormwater event, my field disappears and I have to rebuild it. So I think that it's been a driver on our 5-year capital plan for a long time. I think we pivoted in the vision because of things that happened at Claxon, and from hearing from the user groups and understanding the girls softball program is large now, and honestly, probably underserved by the facilities presently that we have in town. So I think it kind of took care of many different wishes all at once. And furthermore, I think I'd like to add that you can still play baseball on a softball skin. We do that all the time. So to John's point, Jim's point, it's interesting to hear that Mr. McLeod was a baseball coach, but I think Needham baseball softball is one now, and hopefully his memory is being served correctly.
So we have now dedicated 90-foot field at the high school, dedicated at DeFazio, and then dedicated at Walker Gordon.
That's correct. A short 90 at Walker Gordon, 2 regulation 90s. So this would make 3 regulation softball skins if this were to be approved, 2 at Claxton and then 1 at the.
But in terms of a 90-foot baseball,
That's right, 3.
they're content with those 3 fields. Okay, thanks.
Anything else on McLeod? If not, let's go to the next one, RTS property improvements.
Yeah, so this is our standing article for property improvements at the RTS. We pushed back a lot of the bigger projects pending the results of the RTS service delivery study and the future of that facility, but the ventilation repairs could not be pushed back. It's basically looking to repair and or replace the existing 8 air vents that are on the tipping floor and the loading pit area. They're responsible for pulling a lot of the dust out and any other particle matter up and out of the roofs. And the existing vents just aren't operational right now. It does make the environment pretty difficult to work in and has some safety concerns with regards to just breathing in the air. And so we were looking to replace it with really just vents that work and help improve the air quality in that area. It would also help improve some of the visibility by just removing all of the dust.
Yeah, I'm not resisting this at all, but at the same time, we're looking at an overall study of the RTS. Is there any inconsistency between, is this work that potentially is going to be thrown away if we redesign the RTS site?
It's possible, but I think we deemed it as critical enough for health and
Critical
safety that we
Short-term health,
wanted
yeah,
to
I
address it. Yeah,
understand that, but I did want to ask the question.
it's possible.
That's why it's the only one that is in this year and all the other ones have been pushed out.
Any other question on that? The next we have Louise's Nifty support project. I want to get you perked up on that.
So you'll see a little bit different how we approached the Nifty's article this year. And basically what we have a more concrete plan than we have had in the past. And the town is, sorry, I did not pull this one up and I'm pulling it up very quickly so I can have the number correct. faster on my computer than it is if I were to dig through. The town is broken up into 16 sub-watershed areas. And what we do is we look at each individual sub-watershed area. Sometimes we do 2 a year, depending on the size of them. And we do a study looking at kind of what feasible projects in that area are. We look at the BMPs, we look at the illicit discharge, and we look at what needs to be done in that specific area. And then the following year, we will do the design for any improvements that need to be made. And then the 3rd year out, we'll ask for construction funds for that design on any actual physical work that we need to do in those areas. And you'll see kind of, if you look through the multiple years, in FY24, we are asking to study watershed area number 4 and design watershed area number 2. We, with previous NIPD's money, have already studied area number 2. And then if you look in 25, you'll see that area 4 moves to design, and in 26, it moves to construction. So the design and construction numbers each year will be more specific as we get closer, because we'll have an idea of what actually needs to be done in that specific area. So right now, those are placeholders for the out years. And then if I remember correctly, this sluice gate replacement that is listed in there is being funded out of ARPA. So it's listed in the physical document, but not in the article, so that we found other funding for.
Any questions on that?
Yeah, I'm confused. Presumably the town meeting's not voting on the ARPA funding.
No.
So the description in the. Oh, no, I don't see it. I'm looking at the town manager's write-up is basically about the sluice gate, and that's what's going to be done by ARPA.
That's
So this is 260,000.
for this study and
These
the
other-
design.
Okay.
Has specifically in these areas 4 and 2, what are you looking to study and design?
So we do look at potential areas of improvement, potential flooding issue areas, and I'm going to let Tom be more specific than that.
Yeah, so we need to treat some of the stormwater before it discharges to the Charles. So we're looking at areas, how much water is being discharged, where are the avenues that we can look at, doing some infiltration, doing some water quality improvements, and then that's what will happen during design. From the study, we'll take those areas and do the design, and then go into construction the following year.
So study is about like taking measurements and understanding.
Taking
the ground
measurements,
state.
finding out the connection points that we have, where's all the water going, where the discharge points.
Should this become part of the public works infrastructure rather than cash capital?
The NIPD's program is separate and distinct from the public works. And in the future, we're looking to have its own dedicated revenue source, which is actually covered in the warrant. We covered by the finance committee in a few weeks. That's the stormwater stabilization fund in fee.
Any other questions? No. The last one that we're going to cover tonight in this chart is traffic improvements. $50,000.
Yeah, so this is our annual article for traffic improvements that are requested through the TMAC committee. So various things such as handicap ramps, crosswalks, flashing LED pedestrian signs, the speed radar signs, etc.
Mr. Chairman, President. So at town meeting last year, there was some question about the amount of this money and whether it should be higher or not. I think the answer was just capacity at the time.
So I think the intent was there are requests that come through the committee that have very low expense, buy a new stop sign. We're not talking about those items. We can absorb those into our operating budget. And sometimes there are bigger projects that we may put forward in future years in our infrastructure article, like redoing an entire intersection that requires handicap ramps, crosswalks. This is sort of the in-between item. So For example, RFBs have become very popular. They're not inexpensive. They're around $25,000-$30,000 to install. So having the ability to be able to actually actualize the request in a relatively short period of time has been sort of the intent of having this money reserved specifically for TMAC requests. So it's for things that are sort of in between the general maintenance items that we definitely consider as part of our operating budget, and items that are really large capital expenditures that we may want to have brought forth from town meeting with specifics about that particular request. So it's really for those in-between items.
Does this amount fund all of the anticipated recommendations of TMAC?
So it's proactive. We're asking for the $50,000 before those particular requests have, but we haven't, I think we found that it's been a sufficient amount of money to move forward on 2 to 3 of the requests that they have that are more expensive.
So who sort of makes the decisions either leading up to it or the final one as to like pedestrian signs that tell people to stop, that sometimes are there on Great Plain Avenue and then sometimes they're gone. I don't know whether they're gone because they're vandalized or a decision is made no longer to have it there. This building is, now there's these pylon type things that are out here and all of a sudden they showed up. So the question is it the police? Is it CMAC? Is it you guys? Is it all of it? And how are these decisions made? Is it's from just an outsider? I am, it just seems random and sometimes it doesn't seem quite as safe as I think it probably should be, because not because the town doesn't want to be, but drivers don't treat it that way. And so can you just fill me in a little bit on the thinking and how that all takes place?
So I think the answer is probably all of the above, as you had indicated. The specific items you're referring to, the Jersey barriers that we've been piloting in a few areas of town are actually through TMAC. They're responding to specific petitions and requests that have come up about safety concerns for largely pedestrian and vehicle accidents that have occurred at these locations. So requests come in through that way. They get vetted by our engineering department to make sure that they comply with warrants and other regulations. So we're not putting a sign where you can't have a sign. When you talk about the pedestrian sign crossing, do you mean like the little stanchion that's in the middle of the crosswalk? They get hit by cars. That tends to be when we have issues, and we'll go out and replace them when they get reported to us. But determining where they get put usually has to do with clearances for turns and making sure that they shouldn't get hit by cars, as opposed to, sometimes people don't pay attention when they drive, which I guess is better for them to hit a stanchion than it is for them to hit a pedestrian. So there's a lot of work that TMAC has been doing, and then we've also been doing complete streets work in the community to evaluate other options that we have to try to provide more pedestrian safety. So I don't have the clearest answer for you. We've had a pedestrian safety audit that we've also done that we've been implementing as well. So it gets often it gets done based on areas that we see as problematic and areas that residents bring to the TMAC that they consider to be problematic as well. I asked Ryan, do you have anything you want to add on
I
that?
think she covered everything. The out here in that Maple, it was TMAC chair, engineering, myself, and the police after somebody got hit here. Well, not a fatality, just got knocked down of what we could do. We went over to Wellesley, near Wellesley Country Club, Babson, saw a pilot that was engineered with barriers way into the street. We adopted that quickly, did not go back to TMAC and put these things in as a pilot safety measure and observe.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? Okay, so that covers those ones. We will not cover these again when we go to the other items. So I just want everyone to know now that speak now or forever hold your peace on some of these. Okay, that we just went over on this chart. Okay. Public Works Infrastructure.
It's next page, last article.
So this is our annual infrastructure article. You will notice from, I want to say last year and out years, it is a little bit smaller. Request in FY24, it's our annual street resurfacing and sidewalk program. adjusted for a little bit of inflation based on the pricing that we're seeing in the market currently. And then as well as a request for the Rosemary Brook to repair some of the failing walls there, as well as to replace the guardrail on Dedham Ave, which currently doesn't meet state guidelines. And we're looking at something that is a more appropriate and compliant option.
Where was?
It's near, it's that white picket fence. It starts at the bridge and then there's some of it across from the DPW building.
Will this leave non-compliant guardrails that aren't being addressed in this? With this amount?
It's a multi-year program. We
And-
actually,
Is there a significant safety issue for any of the stuff not being addressed?
it's, I have to think about how I answer that question. I think we've explored when you maintain guardrail. So if we replace it, we have to make it compliant.
Yep.
If we're just painting it, replacing a board, we
I
don't
guess I'm just concerned that if there,
with the
if we
liability.
know there is stuff that is non-compliant, dangerous, if there is a serious accident there, are we exposing the town to major litigation? And
Public duty rule,
which is,
public has no duty to one particular citizen, but only to the public at large. So you do not have liability under that circumstance.
I was told that by MassDOT, if it's existing, something similar. However, as Karis indicated, that certain, it's like a home, you renovate a certain amount or remove it, it must comply to
Yeah.
current standard.
you know, I guess I'm okay with the legal issue, but I'm not real comfortable with the
But I'm also.
ethical issues.
No, that's a good, no, it's a good
It's
idea.
dangerous.
And so I think, again, this comes down, I think, Mr. Chair, the prioritization issue. And whether or not, you know, if DPW believes, as Dick says, that there could be others that work in that area that might take more of a priority or a higher priority than some of the other work.
So I think we've established a program, DPW. These guardrails are highly controversial as far as people love the aesthetic of the white picket fence and they do not like the aesthetic. I mean, nobody
Yeah.
wants, steel on the side of these nice roads in a community like ours. So we're actually currently, we started last year funding guardrail for the first time. And we're investigating what we're calling, a more aesthetically pleasing version of compliant guardrail. Unfortunately, there aren't a lot of options out there. Ryan's retiring and he says he's gonna go discover one and market it. So that's right now what we're trying to establish. And then we have a phased program for replacement after that.
If I could, the most aesthetically pleasing, in my opinion, is called Core 10. It has a brown look to it versus the steel that as it ages is nasty, that MassDOT uses it on the highways. I think that is what Dover, Needham on the Dover side, Sherburne, more of the country-ish type look. And it's a steel, but it has a rust look. I think that's maybe where Needham would go for the aesthetics versus the steel. And it's fully compliant.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Oh, in the description, it also talks about street resurfacing and sidewalk program. Can you talk about the difference in costs? Because the cost for sidewalks is much higher than streets.
Ryan can talk about the process, but part of it is because you have to make them handicap accessible, which most of our sidewalks right now currently don't meet code. So you're either dealing with ramp issues, which are fairly expensive to construct, or you're dealing with right of way is not the right word, but you're dealing with an area that has encroachments from either poles, trees, other obstructions. So that's why it's partially more expensive. And then Ryan can talk a little bit about
Maybe
the
the staging
construction.
spot too, right?
Sure, so the handwork on sidewalks, most of the sidewalks that the highway division to DPW could overlay that we call low hanging fruit, they were wide enough. They kind of met slope, we could level them off. We've done Greendale Ave, we did a couple miles years ago, other sections. A lot of the sidewalk in town doesn't meet the minimum width, so you can't add contractor's not gonna add 6 inches next to it. Dig it out. So basically, it's all reconstruction. So they remove all it down to gravel grade, re-gravel it, put it to a certain pitch, which is cannot be more than 2% towards the street. So it's actually rebuilding the sidewalk with by hand crews. The asphalt per ton to pave a road is about $78 to $80 a ton. It's massive scale. On sidewalk, it's 150 to 300 typically. We just got a lower bid than that. We were fortunate. We were shocked, but it's usually about $300 to $350 a ton. So sidewalk is about $70 a foot.
And it's much more labor intensive as
Yeah, to
well.
replace it.
And then there's the
That's
granite,
the market. That's the market value.
the granite as well.
Right, and I
And if
think,
Sorry, if we do granite, you just double it.
so that's why there's also a flexibility in the pricing that we have, because in certain applications, we would do granite, and in other applications, we don't do granite.
Any other questions on this article? Do people feel that they have enough information to take action on?
Mr. Chair, I move that the finance committee recommend the article entitled appropriate for public works infrastructure in the amount of $2,581,500.
Your second to that motion?
Second,
Second by Josh, any questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll come to a vote. Barry?
Yes.
Yes.
Louise?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes,
Josh?
yes.
Jim?
Yes.
The chair votes yes, so that passes unanimously. Another one does. Okay. Dave, that's the order you requested.
We can go back to the top.
We go back to the top. Do we need folks here or?
Nope.
We don't put on the enterprise funds?
The first one should be fine.
So, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. If there's anything, I'm just across the hall.
You do go home now, right?
Eventually.
So, Mr. Chair, going back to the beginning of the document, it's one page in appropriate for property tax assistance program. This is a funding request for $50,000 for the matching program, which of course, the amount that the town's been appropriating in the last few years has been more than a match. The fund has been generating in the teens in terms of donations in the last several years. The town's been appropriating 50,000. The appropriation from last year, 50,000, has not yet been distributed. The committee that does make social board recommendations is meeting next week. But I can tell you that the year prior appropriation, there were 35 applicants received, and this would have been for fiscal 22. 25 awards were granted by the property tax assistance program. The average award was $1,876. Of the
For a total of, I can't do the math.
for a total of 47,000.
So all I really want to know, Dave, is the 50,000 the right amount? That's all I want to know.
It is the amount that they work with, and they've been satisfied. Their intent is to use most of the 50,000 every single year. So it's a combination of the number of applications that you receive, and then this severity of the situation of the individual applicant.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to recommend adoption of the warrant article entitled appropriate for Needham Property Tax Assistance Program.
Second, but I have a question.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and then a question from Louise.
So the voluntary fund also receives, the fund also receives additional funding from donations. So what is the balance in the fund, do you know?
It's approximately $18,000 worth of donations that they've received to date
Okay,
in the fund. And again, those monies, as well as the 50,000 that was appropriated last year, is what will be distributed. for the one, the programs we're referring to, there were 25 awards made from that fund, and it was an average of $804.
Thank you.
Any other questions while we have the motion? So we'll take action on Jim's motion to recommend adoption, second by Louise. Barry?
Yes,
Aaron?
Yes.
Louise?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes,
Josh?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes,
And the chair votes yes as well. That passes unanimously. Compensated absences fund, Dave.
Yeah, that's at the bottom, it's on the next page. First article, this is to our fund in order to cover expenses that are incurred. Certain individuals who retire are eligible to have their non-occupational sick leave that they haven't used to be purchased back by the town. It's basically 25% of the total value of the hours that they have. The total liability, as well as individuals by state law, when they separate service, if they have unused vacation time, they would also be paid at time of separation from service, whether that separation is voluntary retirement or by disability. The estimated value of the liability in total is a little over $5 million. And the goal for this fund is to be approximately $1 million, which is about 20% of the total liability. The amounts that when individuals retire that can be paid within the actual operating budget, department budget, are paid from there. For budgets that can't support it, then that's when that's the whole purpose of this fund.
So of the goal being $1 million,
We would be at $1 million, just under $1 million.
if we
The
funded
fund-
a 250 here.
If we funded 250, the balance in the fund as of February 28th is 719,000. So the 250 bringing up to 969.
within the state system, you have to, at least university state system, you have to retire within 60 days in order to take advantage of the buyback up to 6 hours. Is that the same here?
No, on the school department side, they actually, the individual actually has to declare that they're retiring within, I forget if it's 1 year or 2 years. On the town side, it's basically at the time that you announce that you're retiring. You have to retire. Retirement means to take a pension from the Needham Contributory Retirement System. And that's that or death are the only two qualifying events to be paid out. But no notice is required.
And remind me again, is there a cap on the amount of sick hours that can be accumulated?
There's not a cap on the number of non-occupational sick leave hours. Can roll that over. Over the years, the town has been implementing caps in terms of the buyback of, for instance, not more than 960 hours, and only 25% of that 960 would be eligible for purchase back. There are in every single collection.
So you're not capped for accruing, but you are capped in terms of the amount of buyback. Okay.
Correct. And that is true for every single union. There is a percentage of the population that is capped, including non-represented employees. And then there's been a number of unions where sick leave buyback has actually been negotiated out. So in the different dates for the different unions, but the custodian unions, anybody hired after 2009 is not eligible to participate. Anybody in the professional and clerical administration union, anybody hired after July of 2007 is not eligible to participate. DPW union people hired after January of 2008 can't participate. Non-represented employees after April of 2008 are not allowed to participate. So
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to recommend adoption of the warrant article entitled appropriate for compensated absences fund.
Second.
Second by Louise. Any Questions?
Just a question.
Question.
Mechanically, how is it kept track of this number of days taken? And how, whether it is or isn't work related?
Well, non-occupational sick leave is for not related to job. If there was
Yeah,
a
but
job-
I mean, it's kept track of each time someone's out for a day, is that
Yes, correct.
recorded as?
Every week, everyone has to submit.
And the manager has to approve it.
Mm-hmm.
And the manager has to approve it. For instance, myself, every week I have to submit my use of any paid time off, whether it's not sick leave, vacation.
Dave, what was
Frank, do you have a
the,
question?
what was used last year, last couple of years? I mean, what was the amount we brought back in the last couple of years?
The total amount that get purchased, I'll have to get back to the committee, but it's probably about 150,000. But none of the individuals that was expected to hit this fund in fiscal 22 retired. They will. We know we got some big hits this year. And without revealing any constants, I know I have a significant hit happening in next fiscal year. There's generally the individuals have been with the town the longest have the most time, and those individuals began employment at a time that there was no cap. So when those payouts happen, they're significant.
You good, Barry?
Thank you.
Do we have a motion and a second? We've had discussion. Hearing nothing further, we'll come to a vote. Barry?
Yes.
Yes.
Louise?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Josh?
Yes.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well. So that passes unanimously. So Dave, that then brings us to the sewer enterprise fund budget.
Yes, I distributed to you all when you came in. We have our preliminary assessment for the sewer and water enterprise fund from the MWRA. And the table that you have, which is the table that will appear in the warrant, is updated to reflect the number that came from the MWRA. In the case of the sewer enterprise fund, it's the assessment is just under $7.2 million. It's a 6.5% increase in the assessment over the current year. All the other amounts that appear in the chart have already been vetted by you by your review of the sewer enterprise fund budget. The bottom line budget of sewer, which is inclusive of both the drains program and the in the sewer operation, is up 6.1%, primarily driven by the increase in the MWRA assessment. And just as a reminder, the portion of this budget that's related to the drains program is $810,000.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we recommend adoption of the warrant article for the sewer enterprise.
Second.
Second, we have a second by Louise, question by Josh.
Can I ask a question of Dave? What's the balance of the sewer enterprise fund retained earnings?
Don't know, hasn't been certified yet.
Okay, but
That we should be able to satisfy that amount that I'm estimating to be from sewer enterprise funds to cover the appropriation 24.
is it too early to ask, or what was it last
Well,
year? Is that?
It was a couple million
a couple
dollars.
million? Okay.
And that's good, Josh?
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? All right, we have a motion and a second, so we'll come to a vote again. Barry?
Yes.
Yes.
Louise?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Josh?
Yes.
Yes.
And chair votes yes as well, so. Sewer enterprise. Not been recommended. Now we turn to water enterprise.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, as well, the same, all the figures are the same as what the committee discussed when it went over the water enterprise fund budget. The only change is the MWRA assessment. Here, it's up significantly more, not unexpected. There was a higher reliance on water during calendar year 2022 and part of the warmer summer. And as a result, the assessment is just under $1.9 million. It's a $422,000 increase. That's a 28.8% increase over the current year.
Any questions on this?
That's the same question. What was the retained earnings last year?
Retained earnings in water, I believe, was around 3 million.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to recommend adoption of the warrant article for the water enterprise account.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Louise. You guys are the team tonight, which we appreciate.
One more
Any
question.
one more question, of course.
So are any retained earnings set to be used to fund the budget?
Not the water budget, but I will be looking back at whether or not that would be necessary to do.
Any further questions? We'll come to a vote. Barry,
Yes.
Yes.
Louise,
Yes.
Dick,
Yes.
Rod,
Yes.
Yes.
chair votes yes as well. That's unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I have a significant correction. I was confused into the water enterprise fund was $5 million last year, but we had used significant amount for appropriations.
Retained earnings. you were talking.
Yes, I'm sorry, retained earnings.
The next one, David, is rescinding of prior debt authorizations.
Yes, and that's the last of the handouts that I provided to the committee. There's one authorization seeking to rescind. This is the Mitchell School restroom upgrades that was approved at the outdoor annual town meeting in June of 2020. The original authorization was $676,700. Project is done, completed, closed out, and we have an unborrowed amount which we don't need of $200,000.
So can we put that towards the budget for the kindergarten teachers at the Mitchell School? Let's get it.
Well, they had a big problem with the modules.
Did they?
Yeah, that's during the peg freeze.
Oh, no, I didn't hear about
Yeah.
that.
So there may be additional water leakage.
At the Mitchell
Ah.
School.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we recommend adoption of the warrant article to rescind the debt authorization.
Second.
I just had a discussion item or a question for Dave. So Dave, is this something we can do at a special town meeting as well? So the reason why I ask is I was reading the PPPC minutes and I was struck by, it looks like for the public safety project, they're gonna have about $1.2 million a month spent funds, which is pretty remarkable considering they were looking for more money in their budget. And I think we and others pushed back on that, and I'm glad we did. And that turns out, so is there any way to sort of push that so we can get that on in the fall? And I'm only saying that because we have so much pressure coming up on the capital side, and if it's 1.2 million, that doesn't need, I hate to be sitting there. So is it something we can do in the
Yes,
fall?
we can do it in fall. In fact, if you recall, just last fall, we had a rescission with the Jack Cogswell building. So, yes.
And do you have a recommendation on how best to, is that something we have to do with the PPCC or how, who
what
pushes for these rescissions?
Huge for me.
So can you get going on that one?
Yeah, when I have my annual check-in with folks in July, I'll be asking status of projects and whether the authorization is still needed.
Yeah, so on, just so you know, public safety, that their last minutes were $1.2 million. So that would be great, thank you. Okay, anything further on this item? So we have a motion and a second, and so we're gonna go for a vote. Barry?
Yes, sorry.
Yes.
Louise?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Josh?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Chair votes yes as well. That passes unanimously. And David, the last one you had for us was the athletic facility improvement fund.
Yes, this is a request. This is the annual contribution that goes into the athletic stabilization fund from equal to the average of the proceeds collected by the Park and Recreation Department for the purposes of field use, to which they allocate approximately $5 per participant to go to this fund.
Near the end.
Some going to report myself.
About halfway through.
But before zoning,
After.
Oh, it's right after the rescind debt article.
okay.
Are we gonna have another article for appropriate to athletic facility improvements? Or
This
other
is-
funds?
There may be some on special time meeting.
Mr. Chair, as I asked Dave prior, when we had the Park and Rec here, we discussed the concept of the extent that the Rosemary Pool revenue exceeded the operating expenses, whether it makes sense to earmark that differential into the athletic facility improvement fund for ultimate use of capital repairs at the Rosemary Pool. And we just don't have that number yet, but it seems to me it might be appropriate to increase this amount by that amount.
And I do want to have a meeting with the subcommittee of finance committee on that, just to make sure that we're all on the same page with that, but we won't know that result until after June 30th for fiscal 23, and so that would be a fall town meeting
Mhm.
appropriation.
All right, we're gonna call you back for that. You're gonna have callback status for that one. But Dave, I had a question. This 33, is this based on average, and is it like a fiscal year average, or is it a calendar year, or how?
It's a fiscal year average.
Okay, so this 33 represents fiscal years, average of 21 and 20, fiscal years 21 and 22.
It would represent 22, 21, 20.
19.
Thank you.
And 2020, is that what you said?
Yes.
And Dave, do you know the balance? What's in the fund now?
$1 million, $1,001,081.64 as of 12/30 today.
And the expected, the turf that was just 2 years ago, right? Or 3 years ago? I'm just trying to guesstimate how long we want this is gonna last. I mean, before we're gonna use it again for new turf.
Well, for the new turf, it should be about 8 to 10 years.
Okay.
For the
I
carpet.
think 2028, 2029, somewhere around that there.
But there may be other projects before that.
Right, no, I understand.
Well, to that point, is McLeod Field, would that be a project that would ever be considered to be funded through this fund?
Well, yes, it qualifies as an athletic facility, but if you were to do that, that would wipe it out, and then, I mean, if you're going, we want to spend 100% of it, then you're never gonna
Yeah.
get to your target.
Well, I guess a different way of saying it is is McLeod Field budgeted into the target? Or is it thought of as something separate outside?
The fund is specific to athletic facility, is general for athletic facilities. But it was specifically created looking at the carpet, because that was a project that was made possible by significant donations. And a couple of individuals that contribute millions of dollars.
$5.5 million out of a $7 million project.
But it's also a known future expense.
And
That's
because
really
of
good.
that, that's why we created it to be able to replace the carpet without a significant hit in any one
So
year.
it's for periodic, substantial capital, known capital expenditures.
Correct.
Exactly.
And to that point, for instance, knowing that Memorial, we knew that we were looking at the Memorial Park Fieldhouse project and such, so a portion of that was funded, and we put, the town put monies aside into the fund specifically for when we did that project. So it has been used as a tool to address some major capital expenditures in the recreation athletics area.
Any other questions on this?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we recommend adoption of the warrant article appropriate to athletic facility improvement fund.
Second,
Second by Louise. Any discussion or comment from anyone?
And just one more point. Last year, I think this was one of the articles that we supplemented with additional free cash.
It may, I think, the major appropriation was the, one of the projects that got funded from this had a turn back of 670,000, and that was returned to the fund. Because the fund was just a couple $100,000 until that money got returned.
Well, I was thinking about I think there was a motion to amend at the annual town meeting last year. I think we
there was,
supplemented by
that's
50,000.
why there was that big discussion.
Yeah.
Anything further on this? The motion and second on the floor, we'll go to the vote. Barry,
Yes.
Yes.
Louise,
Yes.
Yes,
Josh,
Yes.
Chip?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well, so that's approved. All right, we got a good chunk there done, David, didn't we? So next up on the agenda is, as you remember at our last meeting in February, we voted our draft budget. And I sent a letter to the town manager with that and with our thinking and rationale behind it. I've not heard anything further with respect to either questions about it, concerns about it. And so in keeping with our timing to be able to have the operating budget put into the town meeting warrant and with my letter to be included with that, it requires us taking action on this to make what we had done previously as a draft into our final approved and voted FY24 operating budget. So that's what we have in front
Mr.
of us.
Chairman, I make a motion that we give final approval to the general fund operating budget for FY 2024 as stated in the handout and the prior draft vote.
Is there a second for that?
Second,
Seconded by Louise. Thank you. Is there any discussion or comment from anyone?
I thought your letter was great.
yeah.
I really thought it was well written. And I thought it had very good explanations of what it is that the finance committee is trying to do and what some of the imperatives are. So I thought it was very good communication.
Thank you for that. It takes a village. We have it, which is good. And which I thank you guys for. So let's come to the vote. Barry,
Yes.
all right,
Yes.
Louise,
Yes.
Dick,
yes.
Josh,
Yes.
Yes.
chair votes yes. So we have that accomplished. Okay, anything, we're gonna be meeting again next week, it looks like, Louise, and then probably 2 weeks off after that.
Yes, we
Potentially.
haven't come up with anything for those 2 weeks.
So it looks like we'll meet next Wednesday, which is the 8th.
Yes. Yeah.
Correct. And then not the 15th or the 22nd, but then the 29th. This looks what the schedule looks like. So, and then in April, it looks like we'll have 2 meetings, if not 3.
5th and 19th.
5th and the 19th, okay. So that's what our schedule looks like. Is there any updates that people have for us from other meetings they've attended or observations they have?
I went to the select board meeting last night and the Castle Hill Development Agreement was released the day prior on Monday. They deferred a vote or taking action on the development agreement. I think that's a date to be determined. They said potentially March 6th, but that hasn't been posted yet.
Was there any substantive discussion on it, or was it just a presentation by the by Northland.
There's a presentation by Northland, and then there was a summary of some of the changes or things that were different from in this agreement compared to the draft agreement. The main differences are that the conveyance, the two 3-acre parcels are going to be conveyed first to Northland, and then those parcels will be subdivided in order for Northland to secure funding to purchase the rest of the main parcel.
So is that gonna like serve as collateral for there?
I assume so.
And as I understand it, Mr. Chairman, the issue has already been discussed, voted, and approved. So regardless really of what happens at the select board meetings, and regardless of what's contained in either of these documents, which were not fully negotiated and released at the time of the vote, there's really not much either the finance committee or town meeting can do. That's my understanding.
That's how I understand it as well. I think there will obviously be parts of the ZBA with respect to what happens there.
Yeah.
You know, they make a point of it's 100-foot buffer from Whitman Road. Well, 100 feet buffer is 30 yards.
Right.
You can visualize 30 yards. It's not 100 yards, it's 30 yards.
Right.
And things like that. And then there's been no discussion from I've seen of what height restrictions are going to be or limitations or anything along those lines. So it should be very interesting to see how that all plays out.
Can I ask a question of Dave? So in the development agreement, it says that the final closure will be no later than February 25th, so February 28th, 2025. That's when the town, at that point or earlier, will get control of the parcels. And the $2.5 million will be due. So town meeting authorized $2.5 million in the fall. When will that be issued? When will those bonds be issued?
Oh, not until we actually purchase the property.
Okay.
The closing.
Yeah, we don't borrow before.
But you'll have it on your debt.
Yes, it'll be in the debt.
It's right. It's 2 million is right, not available for other borrowing.
Right.
Thank you for that. Any other things that people have to raise? I will, if not, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
There's a second for that?
Second.
Second. All right, we had good work by you guys tonight. Barry, you can vote yes, but you need to tell us where you are.
Indian Harbor Beach, Florida.
Good for you.
I'll be home tomorrow.
Don't rush back. It's nothing great.
I
going
know,
on.
no. But thank you. I'm glad it worked out. I could join you guys. I
Thank you for thanks for taking the time to do so. We always need you, but we really needed you tonight. So thank you for that. So you vote to adjourn, correct?
Yeah, I kind of like looking at you guys. No, I'm kidding.
All right, Karen.
Yes.
Louise,
Yes.
Dick,
Yes.
Josh,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. So we're adjourned until next month. Thanks, David.